So good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. I so appreciate you tuning in to this podcast. It means a lot to me because I know that you are all busy people. You are living lives, got kids to run after, but thank you for making this part of your day. Whatever you can do to push this program out to more people is appreciated by me because a couple of reasons. We're trying to build an audience, and also because the people I bring to you each week on a weekly basis are amazing people. They're activists, they're thinkers, they're writers, they're doers. And today it is such a pleasure to, and today's guest is no exception to all of those things. She's a filmmaker, and her name is Gloria Z. Greenfield. Gloria Greenfield, welcome to the Hamilton Review.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
So I met Gloria at a screening of her recent documentary or film, which is entitled Civilization in the Danger Zone. We're going to talk about this particular film as we have this conversation. But Gloria, you've been out there for a while. You've done a lot of films, but before we get to the whole film catalog that you have amassed, I'd like to have my guests talk a little bit about who they are. Who is Gloria Greenfield? A little bit of where you were born, how you grew up, and a little bit of the inflection points in your life that have caused you to be doing what you're doing, because you are clearly a very passionate individual and you're doing some wonderful things. So, Gloria, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you.
Okay, so I was born in 1950 in Coney Island, which is in New York, for those who don't know Coney Island, to first generation mother and father. My mother's family came from Minsk, and my father's family came from Brela in Romania, just outside of Bucharest. And when my father was 13 years old, he ran away and joined the Navy, and it took his mother about a year to find him. This was right after his father died. And then he was able to join the army when he was of age, when the Second World War broke out. And because I was born in 1950, that was just 5 years after the end of the Holocaust, end of the Second World War. And I remember, being, 3, 4, 5 years old, sitting on my father's lap while he and my uncles were sharing information that was coming in about what happened in the camps.
Yeah.
And I actually appreciate that these terrible things weren't hidden from me, because, well, a couple of things. One was, I realized at a young age that I was very fortunate to be born in this and to grow up in this country.
Yep.
And that many people went through horrible things in the Second World War, in the Holocaust, but also there were genocides that happened in other places as well. So it gave me a sense of reality, of how things can go bad, and which I interpret as it's very important that we make sure that we do what we can so things don't get to that point. Because if we stick our heads in the sand, and if we don't care and involve ourselves in bringing the best out in people, I had a sense of how horrible things could get.
So even as a young girl, you were hearing stories about what was, and did that fill you with fear? Did that make you paranoid or fearful No, you just kind of listened to it and you pondered it and you took it in. Okay. Interesting.
Yes. And as I was growing up, you know, in my teens even, I always looked for more information to read about how things could go really bad in the world if we didn't take responsibility. So I wasn't paranoid. I just had a sense of a real understanding of that things can really go bad, and an appreciation for having faith in God.
Yeah. So were you a religious family? Were your parents kosher? Were they observant?
Yeah, they came from both of my parents grew up in Orthodox homes. We were a working class family. Neither one of my parents finished high school, so they worked hard to raise my sister and I, and to make sure that we'd be able to go to college. And I think that the connection with faith for me translated into understanding that if it is because of foundational texts like the Hebrew Bible, like rabbinic literature, and for Christians, in the Christian Bible, but basically Judeo-Christian values really helping to keep civilization alive. Yeah. That without the Ten Commandments and more, we would be living in a very chaotic, dangerous place. So I am very thankful to my parents for raising us the way that they did. Now, my father, who obviously, had a huge influence on me, my father also taught me to actively fight back, and that if and he was a wrestler in the Army. He was a very strong, man, and he showed us that if anybody would call us a dirty Jew or whatever, you need to fight back. And I remember in junior high school, or what's called middle school today, a German student came up to me and called me a kike and threw me into the lockers. And I immediately, started fighting back. And my biggest concern was that my father not be disappointed in me that I didn't fight strong enough. So I'm not promoting physical violence, but I am promoting the sense of fighting back, whether it's in activism, nonviolent activism.
Sure.
But that we can't be intimidated. It's so I learned that at a very early age, that when we become intimidated by bullies, then we empower them.
Yeah, they win. And I think that the old idea, and this is a Hebraic idea, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The guy shoves you into the lockers. Guess what? You get shoved back. Okay, you didn't incite the moment. You're responding to it. So I hope you nailed him. Was it a guy or a gal?
It was a girl.
Okay, I hope you nailed her.
Well, we had to be separated, and the sad thing was that we both got suspended.
Of course, the principles.
A moral equivalency existed back then, right?
Yeah, I know.
But my father was very proud of me.
He took you. Isn't there a place in Cody Island where you were like what is the place called back there where you go and have fun at the beach? I guess what is the name of the?
Oh, you mean the boardwalk?
The boardwalk, yeah. He took you to the boardwalk and bought you ice cream, probably. Your dad would have been. I'm sure your dad was very proud of you for fighting back.
Yes, he was.
Good
So then, and then I went off to college. I went to SUNY Oswego, State University of New York at Oswego. And I became very involved I was studying communications, because communication was always really important to me.
Yeah.
And, and one of my favorite courses was rhetoric, and really studying the similarities between the hard left and the hard right, studying extremes. And how when you analyze them, it's often very similar.
Yep, exactly.
And then I got very involved I went through a period of time where I was, because I graduated from high school in 1968. I started college in 1968, and that was a time I was at Woodstock Film Festival, not Film Festival, the Woodstock Music Festival.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I went through sort of a sort of lefty period of,
hippie, you were a hippie.
I was a hippie, and I was against the Vietnam War, and then I got involved in the feminist movement.
Okay.
And I had a tendency, like whatever I did, usually, not everything I did, but many of the things I did passionately.
Sure.
But I realized, thank God, that movements that depend upon demonizing the other, it's really very cancerous.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, you're right. And listen, I just the hippie movement. I was a little bit younger in terms of watching this thing. I was like the little brother to a lot of the hippies, and in my own little way, I tried to be a hippie, and then all my friends said, "Hey, Bob, you're not a hippie. You got to get rid of the briefcase." And so I couldn't quite get rid of the briefcase. So I tried my best to be a hippie. I was thrown out. The hippies wouldn't allow me, and so thank God for that. I never did smoke marijuana. I still haven't smoked marijuana, but and that, but I understand what you're saying. There was a certain demonization, certainly of capitalism by the hippies and the whole culture. Really, it was a revolution against the culture, and I can see how you certainly with a background in faith. To a degree, there was a little bit of a secular nature to these movements, both the feminist movement and the hippie movement, for that matter, because I remember those both very, very well, of course. But then you moved on. You moved on to other things.
Yes. But it's interesting, because even while I was in college, I was very involved in media.
Yeah.
As so, and then beyond that, so I've been a news editor. I've been a radio DJ. I've been a book publisher. That's all, it's the communication. It's my intense desire to use communication as a way of getting people to think about what's happening in the world, whatever stages we're in, and what can be done to help make things better. And then I went through a period of time where I got involved in corporate America. I became the director, the marketing manager for $1 billion product line in a very large computer company. This was in the 80s.
Okay.
And I learned a lot from that, because I had with a product line that was $1 billion, I had million plus annual marketing budget. So I was really able to like work on, to understand marketing in a very strong way. And then after about 7 years, I felt like I had been selling my skills, and it didn't feel good because I didn't feel that I was doing something that was really of value to the world, something that, would be contributing. And so in Judaism, we have this term, tshuva, where we, do penance so I felt like I needed to do tshuva. So I went back and did a second master's in Jewish thought. And I studied with in particular interest in sort of Jewish mysticism, not the charlatan type, but really an understanding like deep Jewish thought. And I loved learning, and
So you're talking about going back, into what exactly are you referring to when you talk about Jewish? I mean, there's a lot of Jewish mysticism historically, and certainly in Europe, and hundreds of years ago. Usually, I think about that. What kind of who were you studying? What
at Hebrew College, I was studying Jewish thought. I was doing a master's in that. And it was really understanding, like going into Maimonides and other of the sages, the great Jewish thinkers. I wasn't looking at modernity. I was looking at historic.
Yeah, Maimonides and Nachmanides and different guys like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
They were great thinkers, and a lot of them have had gigantic influence. Obviously, Maimonides in particular had great influence even today. He's quoted very frequently.
I was really taken with the understanding of of things not being necessarily symbols, but actually empowered. So then that was the difference between Maimonides and Nachmanides. Maimonides was more of a scientist, and Nachmanides was more of a mystic in a sense, in looking at, for instance, the mezuzahs that Jews have on their doorposts throughout their house. Maimonides would say it's there to remind us to keep halakha, and Nachmanides would say it's actually empowered and it actually protects us. So that I was like really focused on that stuff, and then when I finished my graduate studies, I then started developing advanced adult Jewish learning in synagogues, and I became the director for adult Jewish learning for combined Jewish philanthropies in the greater Boston area. And I loved it. I was having a great time, but I felt like I was missing something, because I wanted to incorporate Zionism into the work that I was doing for adult Jewish learning.
Yeah.
And so I was recruited to run an Israel advocacy organization, and then
So hold on for 1 second. So you mentioned this concept of Zionism. I know what Zionism is, but I want you to define Zionism to our listeners just real quickly, because I think this is an important part of who you are, certainly in terms of the things that motivate you, and because knowing just our conversation that you. This idea, I'm talking about modern Zionism that was really happening in the late 19th century in Europe. And I think Herzl was the one who really made it happen. I mean, he established the World Zionist Organization, I think, or Was that it? Was that the name of the organization? It was in the late 19th century. So to just define for everyone what a Zionist really is.
Okay, so an understanding that the land of Israel is central to Jewish identity. It's throughout all of our texts. It's throughout the Torah. It's through the Hebrew Bible. It's throughout rabbinic. It's central, and it's understanding. And we're talking about the land. We're not talking about parts of the land.
Yeah,
we're talking about a Hebrew Bible, a biblical understanding of the land of Israel, and how Jews are commanded to live in the land.
Yeah, to inhabit the land. Yeah, Eretz Israel. And so, absolutely, this is, listen, the very, very beginning, this idea of the land of Canaan, and which ultimately became, the land that David ruled, and the land of Solomon, and the promised land that Moses led the children of Israel toward. Unfortunately, he didn't make it in, but everyone else did, kind of after a generation. But so no, I think that this is something that this idea of the concept of the sacredness of the land, the actual land, and that was. It's very clear to me as a Christian that this is very, the Bible is unmistakably clear about this. This is not some kind of an ethereal idea. Is very much the land of Israel, and I've been to Israel on many occasions, and I have to say that since 1948, this land has been transformed into one of the most amazing spots, garden spots on the face of the earth. I every time I go there, I'm just astonished by the forest and the fields and the greenery, and in a land that is pretty arid, actually. But it's amazing. And so that was something that I think that American Jewry is losing a little bit. And you can speak to that for a moment, Gloria.
Yes. Yeah, I want to go back to my father for just a couple of minutes, because, I was born in 1950. And so, my father did have some issues, some gender stuff about what girls were capable of doing and not capable of doing. But the one thing that he was very clear about, and he said to me, and he made me promise, that if the Jewish people or the land of Israel were ever in trouble, that I needed to go and fight.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And that was a guiding light for me. It was really important. And so the reason I bring that up now is because I think that one of the problems and it's not just American Jews, it's diaspora Jews. It's Jews who aren't living in the land of Israel. I don't think, outside of Orthodoxy, I don't think that there's enough Jewish families where the parents understand that children need to be taught about the centrality of the land of Israel to Jewish identity, and about the importance of fighting to keep it safe. And I think the same is true if we just go back to America. It's the same is true as Americans, that parents need to teach their children the importance of protecting one's nation, of loving one's nation and protecting one's nation.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking of nationalism. You're speaking of this concept that nations, every nation, there's this a little bit of kind of in the air out there that nationalism and loving your nation is almost a concept which is not in the modern world. How can we say that one nation is better than the other nation, or why would you want to fight and for your country? Certainly we've gone to war and fought for America, and on many occasions. And I think that this is something that the culture is beginning to move away from. We're getting this idea that this global concept that is a little bit worrisome to me, and that nationalism is some kind of regressive thought. I have to say that I completely agree with you that our nation, certainly America, which is a great nation, it's a wonderful nation. I'm so thankful as well to be an American, is something that we need to inculcate into our children. Is that is a great nation, and things that are great we should be willing to fight for. And I know
Right.
those are, for some people, those are regressive words, but I believe them with all my heart. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and particularly, not exclusively, but particularly the nation states of the West, of Western civilization, that, the foundation of Western civilization, I believe very strongly, as many do, that, not enough, but many do, that what this foundation of Western civilization is the Hebrew Bible and the Judeo-Christian values that emanate from the Hebrew Bible. And going back to the Ten Commandments, et cetera, et cetera. Those are really important values to teach our children and for us as adults to live by. And we also, we should celebrate the fact that there are exceptional nations. There are some bad nations, but there are also exceptional nations. And we should be proud and honored that we live in an exceptional nation.
Yeah. No, I'm completely on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to talk about your film, because this is how I met you. And we're going to take a 1-minute break here, Gloria, for 1 second. We're going to sign off, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to dive right into your film. So friends, you're listening today to the Hamilton Review. We're having a great conversation today with Gloria Greenfield, very thoughtful. She's a filmmaker, and we're going to talk about her film in 1 minute. So friends, don't go away.
The Hamilton Review podcast is brought to you by Hamilton Babies, 9 kid-friendly products designed for the little loves in your life. Find them at hamiltonbabies.com or amazon.com. Also consider Dr. Hamilton's recently published book, 7 Secrets of the Newborn, available at Barnes & Noble, your local independent bookstore, and amazon.com.
So friends, welcome back to the Hamilton Review. We're continuing our conversation with Gloria Z. Greenfield. She's a filmmaker. Gloria, one thing we haven't talked about yet or got into is why you got into the film business, because you've done a lot of films. So can you fill us in on that story?
Yeah, I have a very spiritual relationship with my filmmaking, and I believe that I finally found my mission in this is what my mission is for my life. But and here's one of the reasons why I think like that. So I was I was at a point after working in communal organizations, et cetera, where I didn't feel like I was really doing what I was supposed to be doing yet. I felt like it was all steps to get there, and then I got a phone call from the cultural director at the Israeli consulate to New England, saying that there was a filmmaker an Israeli filmmaker who was in Boston for a few years, and he really wanted to make a film, and he needed someone to work with to make this documentary, and would I please meet with him? Now, I love film, but I hesitated about doing this. And actually, I was asked 3 times, and after I was asked the 3rd time, I agreed.
Right.
To work with this. He had been the head of the film unit of the IDF for about 12 years before he came with his wife. She had a fellowship at Harvard Medical. So
By the way, friends, the IDF is the Israel Defense Force. So just so that's what that abbreviation means.
Right. So, thank you.
Yeah.
You. So we decided that we were going to, the film that we were going to produce would be an expansion of Alan Dershowitz's book, The Case for Israel, Democracy's Outpost.
Sure.
Well, I mean, his book was The Case for Israel. The title of the film became The Case for Israel, Democracy's Outpost. And in working with him on the film, I realized that I was told by many people that I actually was good at this and I could do it. And when the film was done, he went back to, he moved back to Israel, and I decided that I was going to found a 501c3 nonprofit film company to produce and disseminate educational films that would strengthen Jewish identity, Jewish nationhood, and the values of freedom and democracy.
Okay.
So I went on to make films, my earlier films, in addition to The Case for Israel, Democracy's Outpost. My second film was Unmasked Judeophobia, which examined the resurgence of lethal Jew hatred in regions around the world, and it identified, and this was true in 2011 when the film came out, that the central engine of, and it's still, mostly true, the central engine of lethal Jew hatred in the world were the jihadist movements.
Mm-hmm. True.
And then after that film, I made Body and Soul, The State of the Jewish Nation, which examined the 3,000-year relationship between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. It presented the legal history of Jewish rights to sovereignty in the land, and it exposed the campaigns to erase both Jewish and Christian histories.
Yep.
And that came out in 2014. And at that time, I came to an understanding that it was important for me to go broader.
Yeah.
It was that the Jew hatred that was really emerging, which broadened beyond just the jihadist movements to other segments of American and European countries, that it was important that it was important to start connecting the dots.
Okay.
And so that's what I did. The fourth film is called The Fight of Our Lives, Defeating the Ideological War Against the West. And it did deep dives into, cancel culture, weaponizing identity. It's a very important chapter in that. Well, they all are, but one of the chapters in the film is called People of the Book, and it made the connections between Jews and Christians and how important it is for Jews and Christians to recognize that we've got the same enemies.
Yeah.
And it's really important if we are to protect our faiths and our values, that we had to understand where the threats were coming from.
No, I think that this is something that is very clear to me as a Christian. I certainly understand, first of all, that Christianity is rooted deeply as 100% Jewish in its origins, and that is something that we do share very much, and we share the morality, Ten Commandments, of course, and really the words of Jesus were all from the Torah. I think we all know that. And so that is something that we see, and historically in this country, in the Western world in particular, that has been the foundation of even the Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, is deeply, deeply rooted in this concept of freedom. Even on the Liberty Bell, we have a quotation from the book of Leviticus, and you are certainly well aware of that. And I can see how, and so I think that this kind of segues into this latest film that you've made. And again, the name of it, friends, is Civilization in the Danger Zone, a film by Gloria. It is put out by a Doc, Doc Emet Productions, Doc Emet Productions. I presume that is your 501c3. Is that correct? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
And so, Gloria, tell us how you went into, because this film, and I'll just quickly tell people, I saw this about a month or so ago in Los Angeles, and Gloria was here, which is how I met her. But it really, there's several individuals. It goes through this concept that the fight that we're in right now is a fight for our survival in terms of the culture is at a precipice, and if we don't pull it back into some kind of common sense, we're going to lose this wonderful, wonderful thing that we've grown up in. Certainly, I've grown up with it, and you have too, Gloria. America and the Western world, as we know it, we can, great cultures can go down. We see that historically, and it isn't like we have this. We're not immune from historical factors. So, you made this film. Just came out a year ago, 2022. And first of all, maybe I'm kind of jumping ahead, but maybe tell us, why did you make it? And I think you've kind of answered that to a degree, but go ahead and I'll let you.
I just want to do a little preface. It came out in November of 2022. So it's
brand new. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. And also, I just wanted to let people know what Doc Emet Productions means. Doc is short for documentaries. Emmett is the Hebrew word for truth. And so that's why our tagline is truth in film.
Yes, that is your tagline. I see that.
And so now that can go right into like your question, why did I make the film? In today's world, unfortunately, and particularly I want to look particularly at this point at the United States or North America, at least, although it applies to all of Western civilization. It takes a lot of courage to speak truth today.
True.
And I think that it's really important. Going back to the comment I made earlier in this interview, when I said that when we allow ourselves to be intimidated, we empower our enemies. We must speak truth. We're in a fight right now where the culture is not only telling us as adults, but also our children that truth is just an opinion.
Yeah.
And if you give the wrong opinion, if you don't go along with what the culture is saying today, then you get canceled. You get demonized. And as a society, why have we allowed ourselves to be censored like that? Why have we allowed ourselves to be, a walking, living 1984? Orwell's 1984. That's why I made this film. That's why I made Civilization in the Danger Zone, because it is very important that we stand up and constructively and with courage speak truth.
Yeah, and push back. You talk a lot in this film about critical race theory, And critical race theory, listen, has a great name, but when you really, dissect it, you see what this entails. And I have to say that randomly, because this is a big part of your film, you mentioned this is mentioned, but today, randomly in the Wall Street Journal, they have an editorial about critical race theory in Virginia and how the teachers' unions there are continuing to push it out. And one of the things that they have put out there in Virginia, I'll just read from the journal today, is what they call a toolkit. And the toolkit is given to teachers, and it includes, promotes, and I'll read, and I'm quoting now, the toolkit promotes 13, quote, guiding principles of the BLM movement. These include, quote, working toward a queer-affirming network where heteronormative thinking no longer exists. I think that what that means, friends, is that the idea that boys are boys and girls are girls is something that they want to essentially eliminate. And two, and I'm quoting again, and, quote, the disruption of Western nuclear family dynamics and a return to the, quote, collective village that takes care of each other. The idea that the nuclear family is a Western construct, I'm reading now, would certainly surprise Chinese, Indians, or Koreans who live in America as well. This idea of destroying the nuclear family. I think that as I read this morning in the journal, I thought, whoa, okay, when you really listen, I am for racial equality. I am 100% for telling the story and even the embarrassing and sad tale of slavery in America. I want that to be told. I want people to know that this is something that is a mark, a stain against America, although we did rectify it through the Civil War and lost 500,000 of our men in that war. But to rectify that mistake, which our founding fathers knew was there, by the way. But that being said, this concept of destroying the nuclear family, this is something that I know that you are fighting for in a big ways. And also, because in our pre-conversation or pre-call, you talked about the idea that a lot of the thinking is the hope is that they will destroy religion, number one, and also the nuclear family, which are both foundational to the culture we live in. So, Gloria, I'm sorry for the long dissertation there, but could you speak to these ideas?
Yeah, and I'm going to sort of incorporate some of the film in what I say. The film. First, the film reminds us about the critical importance of faith, family, and nation. And the reason it does that is because those are the very, very important foundational blocks that those who want to destroy the entire system that we have, those who want to destroy our freedom and liberties, that's what they're targeting. They're targeting faith, they're targeting family, meaning nuclear family, and they're targeting nation. And then the film goes into identifying the ideologies and the movements that are intent on obliterating those foundational blocks. There really are calls. What the Wall Street Journal wrote today, this has been going on. There are some radical feminists who are writing about how the family must be destroyed and that all children should belong to everybody. Why? We have to ask historically, why is that important? What is the strategy behind what is the goal behind that strategy of destroying the nuclear family? Well, if there are movements and ideologies that are totalitarian in nature, the family stands in the way. of allowing the nation state to become totalitarian.
Yeah.
Why are they targeting and demonizing people of faith, in particular Jews and Christians? Because Jews and Christians keep the Ten Commandments alive. Jews and Christians of faith. I'm not, I think that it's important. It's important to look at the foundational texts of Judaism and Christianity. It's important to look at Judeo-Christian values. There are people who identify because of convenience as being Jews or being Christians, just so that there's more power when they say that certain things have to be destroyed, where they're not really holding those values. And I know this is an ugly thing to point to, but it's reality. And they want to destroy the nation state because they're going for a globalist. They're going for a centrally controlled governance of the world. And we have, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, who has no hesitation about making public statements about their goal is a global conquest. They want to run the world. In the same way that, the jihadists, would say that they want to establish a global caliphate. But there's a difference between the jihadists and China in terms of power, in terms of resources, etc. I think that, and that's also why we're seeing an alliance, this sort of evil axis between Iran and China and North Korea and Venezuela. We are living in very dangerous times. And that is why I made this film, because we have to open our eyes. We can't ignore it. These really are dangerous times. And if we don't positively protect our values, the values that our founding fathers, established
and fought for,
we are going to be facing horror.
Yeah.
And for those people who feel a little scared about speaking out about this, just think about what your lives would be like if we don't fight this now.
Well, listen, Gloria, you're speaking a little bit in a prophetic way in terms of, looking ahead. And I think that one of the things that, I think is a very powerful thought, and that is this concept of the future. People, we do as people who have lived a little bit, I don't necessarily see the future, but we can see where things are going. And partly we're beginning to see some things that are going, and certainly when I read things like to destroy the nuclear family, boy, oh boy, that is really a recipe for chaos and anarchy. And because this is my world, I deal with families all day long. I look at nuclear families and I applaud the efforts of mothers and fathers and the sacrifices the mothers and fathers make, and the benefit that is to their children, because the ones who are beneficiaries are not the mothers and fathers. They're not sleeping at night. They're not going out they're not flying to Europe because they're taking care of their kids and they're putting them in private schools. And there are a lot of sacrifices that parents make, and there's no way in the world, if you destroy that nuclear family, that the collective, the idea that the village is going to suddenly give these kids the same kind of benefits. That's mythology. And you know that, I know that, and because I see it every day. I can demonstrably show people case after case after case of sacrifice that the parents make for their children, for their progeny. This doesn't happen in this concept of the village. I don't have any problems with the village. The village usually is a grandmother and an auntie and a cousin. That's part of the village. Those are definitely the power people who make up the village. But the bigger picture of just this idea of we destroy the family and we just kind of have this loose culture that everyone kind of takes care of the kids. Well, the kids, of course, are going to fall through the cracks. So this is near and dear to my heart as a pediatrician. So. Our time, I'm looking at our time, and I promise to finish off Gloria with you right now, but I just want to applaud you for your courage. You certainly, your father would be proud of your pushback, his advice to you as a young girl to fight back. You're fighting back, dear. I tell you, that cloud of witnesses that your father's part of is applauding right now. And I so appreciate the fact that you're a courageous person, and it does take courage to fight back. And Gloria, if nothing else, I applaud your courage. Friends who are listening, this film is worth checking out. You can get it through the Doc Emet Productions, and I'm sure that can be found online. Is that correct, Gloria?
Yeah, it might be simpler to if you put civilization in the dangerzone.com, that'll bring you to docemetproductions.com website, and there's a shop on the dashboard that you could go to, and you could buy a DVD, or you could watch the trailer, or you can just read more about the film.
But the DVD is available through Civilization in the Danger Zone. If you just Google .com. So that is That is an email address. Okay. So listen, one last thing. I want to give you the microphone back again and tell us why we need to keep our DVD machines.
Yeah, we're experiencing. Not everybody is recognizing the extent of the censorship that we're experiencing now, but the censorship may get worse before, hopefully it will get better, or it may not get better. But when you don't have DVDs, you are giving away your opportunity to decide what you want to watch, because the digital streaming platforms are deciding what they are going to make available for streaming. Now, streaming's wonderful. I mean, all my films are on, streaming platforms, but they're also on DVD because it's a way of protecting intellectual property. Yeah. It's a way of saying that no, these big tech companies that have been censoring people on Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, they're also involved in, many of them are involved in platforms, in video streaming platforms. And there will be a time when you will want to see a courageous documentary film, or even a courageous feature film, and you won't be able to get your hands on it because the big tech companies will decide that it's going against the grain of what big tech think is. Yeah. And this isn't out of paranoia. This is out of reality.
Okay, well, that is a point well taken. So, friends, don't get rid of your DVD yet, or maybe ever. So, I just wanted Gloria to make that point, which I think is a very, very strong point, which I have not thought of. Okay, well, we're gonna, Gloria, thank you again for your courage. It's been a pleasure having you on the Hamilton Review.
Thank you. Can I just take like 30 seconds? I didn't reply to something that's really important.
Yes. Sure.
The critical race theory is not about ending racism. Critical race theory, both the ideology and the movements like Black Lives Matter, et cetera, that are implementing that, They are about just flipping who's on top, who's on bottom, because they are anti-white. They are saying that Black is good, white is good. They are not holding the banner of the wonderful and righteous thinking of Martin Luther King Jr. That's not what it's about. It's about it's like what happened in South Africa after Mandela. The great Mandela was no longer leading the ANC. The whole country just flipped. Blacks were on top, the coloreds were stayed in the middle, and whites were on the bottom. We need no one to be at the bottom. If we're really fighting for equality, you don't demonize a race of people. And that's what's happening today with critical race theory.
Okay, I accept that point as truth. And so you're absolutely right. Okay, well, listen, friends, thank you again, Gloria, for being on the show and your courage. Friends, you have been listening today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. We have a lot to think about after this conversation. So, Gloria, thank you so much for your time. You're wonderful. And
thank you so much.
And friends, until next time, be well and don't lose your hope. Take care. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.